Hi, I'm Alison Eyring, CEO of Organization Solutions and adjunct professor at the NUS Business School. I'm here today with Malcolm Wall-Morris, CEO of the Dubai Multi Commodities Centre. Hi, Malcolm.
Hey, Alison.
It's great to have you here. DMCC, what an exciting organization. This is an entity that just 10 short years ago was nothing more than a piece of land in the desert, and today has grown to be the fastest growing free trade zone in Dubai and a facilitator of over $100 billion of trade annually. It's a great growth story, Malcolm.
Thank you very much for having me. It's nice to be invited by the NUS Business School to talk about driving growth and Formula One.
Well, we're here in Singapore on the eve of the Grand Prix, and the city's getting ready for it. We're all excited, and I know that you are a fan. And so why don't we bring the two together, talk a little bit about driving growth and what we can learn from the F1. So what do you think is the big lesson that we can learn from the F1 about driving growth?
I think it's about teamwork. I think it's the ultimate expression of having a leader of a team of people all with the same sole focus, which is winning a race, whether it be the driver, whether it be the mechanic. And if you get everything right on the right day at the right time, then you win the race and you take home the prize.
If I think about any race, I think about the driver and the machine. And I think about teamwork is really bringing the two together. So what kind of a driver drives growth?
One who's definitely driven, one who's able to inspire the team to follow, take risks and follow him even if he or she is taking risks, but certainly one who's able to get a shared vision. And if you can share the vision, you can bring the team together, and of course you can ultimately win the race or drive the revenues.
In some ways, races are like markets. Every market's different, the course is different, what it takes to succeed is different. What do you think it takes to drive growth in an emerging market as opposed to a highly developed market?
I think you're absolutely right that race courses, or getting the ultimate expression of winning, which is to get a team and a race car around a track the fastest and reliably, is very similar to markets. The thing with new markets is that the alignment there with F1 is that the team turns up and in a short few days have to put a car and a driver on a track to win the race. Any company entering into a new market is going against potentially incumbents. They have to learn very quickly how to provide the right product or service in the local way. So they've got to potentially translate historical or sort of well-known knowledge into the local sort of flavour. You
were talking about the importance of teamwork for performance in the F1. How does a leader get that? How do you get your team acting like a pit crew? Because they are amazing.
They're amazing because they do a huge amount in a short space of time, and if they get it wrong, it can be the difference between winning and losing a race. Any leader needs to get his team or she needs to get their team on the right page with a shared vision. The way of doing that is finding a reason, a cause, whether it be that you want to grow the business, whether the business is going to survive or not, whether you want to be number one in your market. If you can inspire your team to follow the vision, and even follow you if what you're doing is apparently taking risks, that's very, very important.
Certainly research would say that local innovation is really important for driving growth in emerging markets. And a lot of multinational companies struggle with finding the right balance between local innovation and the need for globalization. How do you think growth leaders can find the right balance?
Well, if I take our own example at DMCC, if we look at a new economy in emerging markets such as Dubai and the UAE, and we look at what's been done elsewhere in developed markets, it's pretty much all been done before. Towers have been built before, ports have been built before, airlines have been built before, but not in that region and not in the same way. So I think the ability is to take conventional wisdom of how to build businesses and drive growth, put the local slant on it, local translation, and then implement it.
Do you think only local people can do that?
Not at all. I am, despite the fact I'm very happy with my home in the UAE and they've been made very welcome. I mean, I'm an Irishman with an English accent, and I think as long as you have the right team of people around you and you have the right relationship with the locals, if you like, that works very, very well.
Now, in a high-performance race like the F1, it seems that the driver is going to have to find a very delicate balance between focusing 100% on the road and where he wants to go. At the same time, needs to be very aware of the other racers that are behind him, in front of him, or on either side. How does a leader do the same?
I think the analogy, once again, between F1 and businesses is fantastic, because you're absolutely right. Teams run their own race. A driver will have a strategy and he'll go out there and he'll try and achieve that. If he's faster and quick enough, then he'll win the race. But of course you get external circumstances. The weather changes, another car's wheel falls off. You know, there's an unscheduled pit stop. That, if you like, you can argue is competition. So a company needs to have its own strategy, its own direction, and be single-minded in the pursuit of that, whilst at the same time able to take advantage or react to change of circumstances. Now, in our organisation at DMCC, we have a view, we have a strategy where the world is going and where we want the DMCC business to sit within that. And we're focused on that. We don't get distracted by noise. And the difficulty is differentiating between what's noise and what is potentially competitive advantage or indeed threat.
One of the benefits of being part of a pit crew in the F1 is you get to get the best of the best. And if you're the leader of that team, you get to select highly qualified, highly trained people. Often leaders inherit many people of different capabilities. What do you do to create an environment where people can learn as fast as possible?
That's a very interesting question, because by association you're saying if you are a leading F1 team, you can choose the best people. More often than not, when you enter a business which isn't performing well, you don't have the best people. You have some great talent, but you also have some talent which isn't quite up to the job. Also, attracting talent is very difficult because the reputation of the business, it's not a tier 1 company, it's not a tier 1 Formula 1 team, for example. So what you need to do is look at your organisation, look at the team. Yes, of course, you need to make changes, but you can only go so fast as the team will allow. Now, by nature, I'm quite impatient. I want things to happen very quickly. What you have to maintain any team is morale. You've got to maintain that focus. And so making changes to your organisation, the structure of it and the people within it, does actually take time. I can tell you at DMCC, the team I wanted to put in place, I wanted there within the first 3 months. But in fact, it almost took 24 months before I had the final team where I felt comfortable that we could deliver the growth that we could. You grow the team and they understand your expectations, they understand what is required. Therefore, they can see for themselves if others within the team either can't or won't deliver to those expectations, it's natural that they decide to leave the organisation.
Certainly stability in a team is important for performance. What happens when team members change?
Well, I think my team sometimes get a little bit bored of this, but the answer is very simple. It's communicate, communicate and communicate. I don't think you can communicate too much to your team. If they know why you're doing something and how you're doing it, then it's far easier. Unfortunately, people come and go. That's the nature of people, the nature of teams. One person doesn't make a team, even if it's the chairman, the CEO, the CFO, and you have to be strong enough to be able to move on if people do decide to leave you.
Now, Malcolm, what do you think is the difference between the driver that wins, or the leader that wins, and the leader that burns out in driving growth in an emerging market?
It's getting the balance right. And you talk about winning and you talk about driving and burning out, but there's consistently good performance. Is it better to win one race and burn out, or is it better to come second in every race for the next 20 years? And that you have to decide is what you want and what your company wants to do.
Consistency is an interesting idea, because when we're in a growth mode in an emerging market, it seems that the name of the game is to change and to adapt. So how do you find the right balance between adaptation and change and stability and discipline? Well,
I look at the DMCC business, and we're now about experiencing our 3rd year of consecutive record growth. In fact, the world's toughest years, the financial crisis years, well documented, have been DMCC's strongest years. It's very difficult for a leader to be delivering consistent record growth, because what's next? Can you always deliver 60, 70, 80% growth year on year as your business performs and becomes more mature? Question of change is, okay, well, I'm going to be a market leader, I'm going to be making a difference. What products and services can I do to improve that? I may not be able to deliver 80% growth consistently for the next 10 years, but I can certainly be ranked as the top 2, top 3, or ranked as being the constant innovator. So change may not be growth, it could be other products and services.
Earlier you talked about the external environment, and I think in any kind of a race, weather is going to play an important factor in performance and safety. Certainly here in Singapore it could rain any day. How do you think leaders in emerging markets can create an organization that is attuned to what's happening externally and can respond quickly to changes in the external environment?
That's a very, very good question, and I think the analogy of a change of circumstances on a racetrack versus a change of circumstances for a business is a very good one. You have a situation, for example, if it rains, it could be what happens if there's an economic meltdown or there's a geopolitical issue. You have to position yourselves, your company, to be able to be nimble enough and be quick enough to move and adapt to change of circumstances. Okay, you're not going to be able to foresee everything that happens to you, but you should be ready to take advantage of the situations if they do happen. Now that sounds far easier to say in words than it does to in practice, because as organisations grow, they become less nimble by fact. They have more people, they have more customers. The way you stay abreast of all that is ensuring that you talk to your customers. You find out who is using your products, who is using your services, why they're using them, why they pay what they do for them, or where are they coming from. It's data, data, data. That's all great, but take the data, don't just put it in a drawer or put it in a database. Analyze it and understand it. I learned earlier in my career, working in financial services, that customers would often say, we need this, we want this. And actually the skill in that particular role was translating what the customer was telling you. They say they may want A, but in fact they didn't know that what they really wanted was B and C. And so the translation, understanding the analysing that data is absolutely vital.
Malcolm, you talked about the importance of the team in F1 performance. And one of the things that I appreciate about what you have done within your own organization is to drive teamwork not necessarily within the groups, although you have, but also to get the groups performing across functions in order to deliver a better customer experience. How does a leader do that?
Well, I regard myself as being slightly different. I mean, I think that the best way of being a leader is to surround yourself with brilliant people and empower them to be brilliant. If they're delivering and they're delivering above and beyond expectations, that means you as a leader, the organisation will deliver also. So if I can help any of my team, if they're, for example, sitting in the finance department, if they have a better understanding of why a customer wants X product or X service, and that cross-training, so much the better. Others may turn around and say, well, no, you're taking away people from their core function. The feedback I've had from my team, the more they understand about what they do and each others do and their place in the organisation, their cog, if you like, within the machine, the more committed they are to deliver it.
Now, driving growth in the way that you have for your organisation has to be exhausting. What is it that you do to maintain stamina, to stay healthy and sane?
Well, it's interesting. I derive a huge amount of personal satisfaction of delivering success and results. If I see that the company that I'm running is making money, is successful, is growing, delivering new products and services, that gives me huge satisfaction. So moments of self-reflection, to sit back and actually take stock of what you've achieved and what you've done, see the growth that you've managed in other people in your team, I derive huge satisfaction from that.
Give me an example of something that you've done to help your organization think about how the world is changing outside of them. Because we talked about how important the external environment is and how it's changing, and the current economic environment in the world isn't the best. How do you keep your people aware of the world and how it's changing and yet not lose faith?
That's an interesting challenge. I mean, particularly for us at DMCC, where we've had 3 consecutive years of record growth during what we could argue, the most challenging economic times. The challenge now is how do we inspire the team to continue changing? As far as they're concerned, everything's going great. Record volumes, record revenues, record companies coming into the free zone. Well, the way we do that is I say, look, it's time to self-reflect. Look today what you do differently than yesterday, what you did differently 2 years ago from today. What have you learned? And that moment of reflection, they realize that they have improved, they have changed. And then I say, now let's take the exercise. Think of the worst possible business scenario you've ever been in or are aware of. And what happened? How did the company or you as an individual get through that? And we have almost like case studies, and we can see what happened. And so they realize that in fact continual change and continual development is essential, otherwise your business or you yourself as an individual becomes surpassed by circumstance. It's a well-known fact that if you can tie a story into objects, you can remember them better, rather than just looking at part of objects rather than the story. So if you were able to reflect and think of a story and how a business was affected by that or an individual was, it helps people they can associate and say, I can see myself in that situation, or I can relate to that. It's very, very important. As soon as they relate, they can understand. If they understand, they'll accept. And if they accept, they'll change.
How do you deal with the challenges that unanticipated change brings? Like in the F1, how could you possibly anticipate that the car in front of you was going to flip over or lose a wheel? You can't run a business anticipating every single little thing like that. So how do you as a leader deal with that?
Well, first things first, you have to make sure you have the right organisation. So you have the right people, the right team, and the right environment that if things do happen unexpectedly, you can react to it. So you have to have a team of firefighters, if you like, who can step into a crisis situation and resolve it. At the same time, you can't all be firefighters because you have to keep on growing and building the business, so get the balance right. But I think what's really, really important in any environment like that is that when times are good, when you have those moments where you are able to reflect, that's when you should be thinking about the future. You should be thinking about what if scenarios. I mean, that's certainly a piece of work that my team have been doing over the last 6 months. As business has been good, we've delivered results that have surprised many. We're thinking, well, what's next? We're not going to sit on our laurels. As my executive chairman always says to me, Malcolm, every finish line is the new start line.
Malcolm, thank you so much for joining us today to share your lessons learned as a leader and about the F1.
Thank you, it's been a pleasure.
And thank you for joining us to learn about driving growth in emerging markets.